everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Paula with Paula's Imperfect Plans. On my channel I share my personal planning and budgeting journey. This is currently a budgeting video, or budgeting related video. So today I am coming in here to, and I was going to show the process that I'm going through in planning for some upcoming budgeting changes. So there are actually a significant amount of changes coming late August to early September in our budget. Some we were prepared for and some not so much. But if you watched any recent budget with me, so August 11th was our last paycheck, and that was the last daycare payment that we made. When we pay for upcoming 2 weeks because we get discounts for prepaying. So our August 11th paycheck is the last paycheck we will have daycare. On August 25th, we will no longer. We might take some of that money to put into a daycare sinking fund, depending on what our daycare sinking fund looks like, to plan for next summer's childcare. But going forward this school year, we will not have a childcare expense. So automatically, I'm just going to take some notes. Automatically, that leaves between $280, because that's what I was paying for one kid full time in daycare per pay period, to $320, which is what I've been paying towards childcare this summer, plus the daycare sinking fund to supplement. And I think I'm going to split the difference because there are some other things I also want to put this money toward. So once either the second paycheck in August, otherwise the extra in that will go to the daycare sinking fund. So for sure, the beginning of September, and for us the first September paycheck is on the 8th, we will have an additional $300 in our paychecks from childcare. This is per paycheck. That is additional. So also with that, we knew that change was coming. Obviously been excited about that for a little while. But starting in September, I recently got word. So the change is actually happening August 21st, which is coming up. But that pay period will get paid out the first paycheck in September. So I'll see the change to my budget as of September 8th. I will be going to 40 hours per week. So full disclosure, this job, I will hit my 6-year anniversary on October 30th. So I've been there almost 6 years, and I have not worked a 40-hour week in the last 6 years. Sometimes if we were traveling to conferences, I may have gone over just a little bit because travel time does that, but I've not hit 40 hours a week in the last 6 years, which was a pretty big change from my job before that. I made less per hour, but I worked a lot of overtime. And we weren't really supposed to have overtime, but I pretty much learned through the process that I could get as much overtime as I wanted. There were 2 different instances where I was covering, once for someone within our agency and once for someone at another agency who did kind of the same thing as us that didn't have a person to cover for maternity leave. So essentially at 2 different points, I covered for 3 months for another person. So I did 2 whole people's jobs for 3 months at a time. So that was 2 different stints. And I remember approaching upper management at that place of employment during that time, especially when it was for someone outside the agency, because I was like, I know that you guys, you're being subcontracted, so you are getting money per referral that this person gets to do her job. And I feel like because I already have my own job referral and caseload, to add on someone else's stuff, I'm doing 2 people's jobs. I feel like I should get a cut of that. Whatever. I feel like I should get a cut of that as an increase in pay since I'm doing 2 people's jobs for the next 3 months. And their response was, you get paid per hour and you get overtime. So you get paid for every hour that you're working. It doesn't matter that you're doing 2 people's jobs. So I, at that point, was pretty good at my job, and I felt like I was pretty efficient, right? I could dictate documentation into my phone through talk to text while driving. I could, do hands-free. I quit doing any of that stuff. I quit doing any multitasking, and I did almost all of my documentation outside of business hours. So during business hours, I would be collaborating with people we were getting referrals from, with workers, with families, trying to get these meetings set up and scheduled, traveling to the meetings, facilitating the meetings, etc. And I would do almost all my documentation after my kid. At this time, I only had one child, and he was under a year old. I switched jobs when he was like 14 months old. So I would just do all my documentation nights and weekends. And I clocked a lot of overtime. So so there was a part of me that really felt guilty. When I took my current job, it was only a 36-hour position. And at first I was worried about paying bills without having access to overtime. Well, as I've continued, this company that I work for is wonderful and actually giving raises. And I make significantly more than I did when I started there. And it continues to go up. And so I'm very thankful that I did that. But I started out with 36 hours. My program is based on, federal and state funding. So it is dependent on funds. And if anyone's ever worked in a not-for-profit that's based on funding, sometimes how that goes. I am currently at 34 hours. That changed last July 1st with some funding changes across the state. So we essentially had 2 34-hour positions and a 24-hour position. So not a lot of hours, not a lot of families compared to, when we started. But before that, I had basically been 36 hours for the last 5 years or last 4 years. And so that's really been my sweet spot and what I've enjoyed, because it has given me the ability to be home with my kids on Fridays. As they've gotten older and gone to school, a couple times I've been offered to go up to 40 hours when someone leaves and they're restructuring before they hire or whatever. And I've continued to decline because A, I want to spend time with my kids on Fridays. And B, I just like a 3-day weekend. And C, because if I have to pay for daycare for every hour that I go to work, it's silly. Like, I understand that, that would be however many more hours per paycheck, but I'm also paying daycare for all of that and taxes. And so that all cuts in, and it just never seemed worth it. So one of my coworkers is leaving because she's actually pursuing her master's, and some of the things she's doing for that is just too much. Essentially, she's doing 2 jobs and only getting, anyway, it's just a lot. And so she decided to be done at the end of August. And so my current coworker, the other coworker, is at 24 hours and I'm at 34. And so with the third person leaving, both of us can go up to 40 hours and carry the caseload that goes with 40 hours, and then that's fully staffed. And I know she wanted to go up to 40 hours. I didn't even ask what would happen if I tried to go up to like 36. I don't know. I just know that all my kids are going to school this year. And so my main reason was I'm not going to go to work on Fridays to, work a couple hours, but have to pay for more daycare. That reason was gone. My kids will all be in school. And as much as I was looking forward to that day for myself, I decided that I would take that 40 hours, because I thought it would be a benefit to our team, to our program, to our agency. I still have the flexibility to work a few long days and then shorter hours on Friday. Like, I still do have that flexibility to be able to continue to do plasma Friday mornings like I was hoping to do, and that kind of stuff. So that I don't have to go Saturday morning when my kids are at home waiting for me. But, so anyway, I am going to 40 hours. That was a really long story, but I haven't worked 40-hour week in 6 years. But I think I worked enough overtime in my life before that to maybe earn that time just with my kids. So I will be going to 40 hours a week, which is that's an extra 6 hours per week, 12 hours per paycheck. So it's actually a pretty significant jump. And right now I'm just ballparking it. So all that to say, I'm kind of ballparking, because obviously I don't know what it's going to be after taxes and things like that, but I'm ballparking about an extra $200 per paycheck with that. And then I'm breaking this up because right now I'm paying $320 per paycheck in daycare. So I'm separating them out because they're going to go to different things. So that $20, that looks like the extra money that I'm looking to have, which is $520 extra per paycheck, which is really exciting. So the next thing, I thought I'd just kind of go through my thought process in how I plan to decide what to do with this. We are going to start in September really focusing on our last debt. For a long time, I was focused on some of the other debt, and this debt, which is our HELOC. It's the only money we owe. It's the only mortgage left on our home, and we have used it ongoing to just do updates to our home. And so there's varying like perspectives on this, but it was like a low interest loan. It wasn't that big of a deal. We took it out in 2017 to put up a garage, which some people say that wasn't a necessity, and I don't understand how one functions without a garage when you have when you're married to a mechanic with a toolbox and all these tools to do all these things. I'm not sure where we were supposed to put it all. But anyway, so we put up a garage, and then we've just, paid it down and advanced more on it to do lots of different things over the years. So my house is not old by any means. It was built in 1979. It's like a prefab modular home that my grandparents put up here on this small acreage in 1979. When my parents bought like the home farm, my grandparents retired up to this acreage. So it's not old by any means. But when I moved back in, literally everything in here was original to 1979. And some things hold up better than others over the years. But we have, we've done siding, windows, roof. I had like those old like press board, I don't even know what else to call them, but it's like plywood. It's not even plywood. It's like, I don't know what they're called. Cabinets, like cheap cabinets. So they were like, they had gotten water on them, and they were like disintegrating and falling apart. And so we did all new kitchen cabinets, countertops, appliances, and flooring. I had old linoleum flooring that in front of my door was like peeling back and ripping back. I had subfloor in half of my kitchen that used to be carpet that I tore out when I replaced the carpet the first time. I replaced the carpet when we moved in because animals had peed in here before we moved in. And then I replaced it again when we did our hard floors because we had kids and a dog on this, on our carpet for 4 years, and it just needed to be redone. And we did the same thing in the bathroom with all new cupboards and sink and cabinets and flooring and just lots of things that have needed updated over the years. In 2020, we had to put like $4,000 into our well, $3,000 into our well. We needed a new well pump and a pressure tank and I think it was the pressure tank and part of the casing that was actually bad. And then once they got down in there, like well pumps are supposed to last like 8 to 10 years or 10 to 12 years. And we were at like 11 or, it was something like that where I was like, you're already in there. Let's just replace the part so I don't have to pay you to come out and dig again when this does go out, considering we're about at max life of it. But anyway, that had always been what we used our HELOC for, and I was really comfortable with that for a long time. And I don't want to say it was used as an emergency fund, but it sort of was, especially like big home-related emergencies like our well, for instance. $1,000 emergency fund was not going to go very far to fix a $3,500 well repair. So because we had access to it, and most of our emergencies were related to our home, car emergencies, we've basically been able to cash flow parts or short-term put parts on credit cards. My husband's a mechanic, so I don't have to pay a mechanic. I just have to be able to purchase the parts to fix things. So really our emergencies were home-based, and so I felt very justified using the HELOC for that. That's a long explanation to explain why we still have this HELOC loan, and I've been comfortable with that for a long time. Like it's lots of people have a mortgage. I just have a HELOC, and that's all I have left. But with the rising interest rate, it is a variable interest rate, and I was looking at it the other day, and it's going up with all the other interest rates. So now what was a low interest loan is no longer a low interest loan, and it's making me, I'm no longer comfortable with it. And so plus once we got rid of a daycare bill, that was going to be the next step anyway, because we had that extra funding and needed to allocate it somewhere, or had that funding free up and needed to allocate it somewhere so it didn't get spent unnecessarily. So that's where that is going to, it's time to start tackling that. So, but one thing that I've learned through the years and through this journey, I've never really had much of a positive cash flow to feel like I could spend a whole lot of money on debt. But I've always put, tax returns, any bigger chunks of money, I don't have a problem throwing those right at debt to get rid of them. So in my years of paying off debt, I've also learned that if you don't have anything saved for anything, you continue to have issues. So, I know that I have a wedding next year, and I'm bad at saving for stuff like that. So it will be a problem come when it's time to book hotel rooms for that wedding. or pay for gas to get to that wedding. Like, that's when those problems start happening. So as much as I want to get this HELOC paid off, I'm going to put a large chunk of my additional of whatever to it. But I'm also going to look at what I have coming in and what is changing, and looking at what other things I would like to start funding, because I need to be better at saving for the point of saving. Not just setting aside money for bills that I know we're going to be due in 6 months, but for, unforeseen things or things that don't have concrete numbers with them yet, which I know is more difficult for me. So I do know that on the HELOC, so then I made a list of things I would like to fund. Well, that's not going to go there. Things I would like to start funding or fund more to than I currently am. And then I was going to look and figure out how I could break that down. These are things that I would like to put more money at each paycheck. HELOC, travel, car gas, saving for winter LP, and our spending, our blow money. So then I decided to break it down. I was kind of looking at, so for travel, $100 per paycheck would be $2,600 a year. In the next year, that would definitely get me enough to go to that wedding. So I was going to start with I almost wrote 1,000. I was going to start with $100 there. I know that per paycheck, I'm going to put that $300 on the HELOC. I'm going to make my regular payment, and every paycheck I'm going to put an extra $300 principal only payment on it, because I said, I committed to that like when I was done paying for daycare, that's where that money was going to go, to get rid of that. So then 100 to travel. I decided that with this 20 that I decided to take off of what had been daycare, I was going to put that 20 into extra spending money. So we'll each get another 10 per paycheck. And then that leaves me with another $100 from this 200. So I put 50 at gas and 50 at LP. So for any of you following me, our gas, we buy in bulk. So I don't budget for gas every time we get paid. And I drive for work, so I get a mileage reimbursement every month. And for the last quite some time, my mileage reimbursement has been able to cover all of our gas costs. And I feel like it's cutting it really close, and that's not happening anymore. And so I need to start putting money aside for that. I don't know if right now I need to start putting money aside for LP. And so our LP, I did just put $800 on the account of prepaid LP, and however many gallons my $802 that I had saved up for LP would buy. So I have them to 50 and 50, but really for a little while, all 100 could go to gas until I feel like I need to start putting money back into LP. But this is kind of the breakdown that I'm looking at. So this will be every 2 weeks, 300 to the HELOC, 100 to travel, 50 to gas, 50 to LP, and 20 more in our spending. So that was how I did it. I was like, this is what I'm expecting for additional income. These are the places I would like to put more money, and how can I break this down in a way that I can make progress on my debt and still feel like I'm saving up for something that I'm going to go to and things that I need to purchase. So that is like my plan for the changes in my paycheck. It's not a specific breakdown because I don't know the exact number, but I do have this stuff kind of figured out. Like, this is where, because there's going to be extra money in my budget. When I sit down to do my September 8th paycheck budget, there's going to be extra money in it. This is where I'm going to plan to put it. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, because I'm really wanting to work on savings for the purpose of savings, not for something specific. So I'm taking this idea. Well, first of all, again, if you've been watching, since I got a raise in July, I committed to saving that raise. So for my first paycheck, it was $53.50. For my second paycheck, it was $53.48. The cents are bugging me. So starting in September, I follow a good kind of midlife crisis, and this is something Becky does, which I thought was a great idea. These kind of savings challenges in the past have deterred me because, yeah, I can save $1 this week and $2 next week, but when I get to the end of it and I'm saving 52 plus 51, I don't know that I'm going to have an extra $103 to do that. I don't know that that's going to be in the budget. So what Becky does with a good kind of midlife crisis, she does the 52-week challenge, but she saves the first week and the last week. So the first week would be 1, and the second and the last week would be 52. which equals 53, because she also gets paid bi-weekly. So when I get paid, I'm paying for 2 weeks because I get paid every 2 weeks. So the second paycheck that she's doing it's 2 plus 51, and she works her way back in. So she has figured out that if you start from both ends and kind of work backwards, that always equals 53. So $53 every paycheck will complete your 52-week savings challenge by the end of 12 months. So starting September 1st, starting my first paycheck in September, I'm going to start, I've been saving this raise and just putting it towards the project that we're working on. But my hopes is by the first paycheck in September, we are done with the project and I'm starting from scratch, so that $53 for the 52-week challenge is going to go into my emergency fund. I'm over $1,000, but we know that is not enough of an emergency fund, and I want to get to a point where when something happens, I don't feel like, ooh, I'll just pull it out of the HELOC because that's easy. So I am going to continue to build my emergency fund while I'm paying on this debt. So that's what that's going to be. And then I'm like, sometimes with all the challenges, I just don't do so well with those. I just pick a number and put it away. But I am going to be starting the 52-week challenge and making like a printable of that to keep track, to actually watch the progress grow in my emergency fund. But starting in September, the $53 that I save will be officially like tracked as the 52-week savings challenge to build up my emergency fund. And if I've done that, so $53 times 26 pay periods is $1,378 in a year. And right now I'm at, I don't know, like 1030 maybe, something like that. That's more than that, 1060. So that'll get me up over $2,500. I'm going to continue to build my emergency fund doing the 52-week challenge. I'm not going to cash stub it because I do the transference in a high yield and it's gaining interest. But I am going to start doing the tracker. So you'll start seeing the tracker in my cash stuffing in September. So that's a plan to save for my emergency fund. I'm going to save $100 a paycheck for travel. I might make a fun way to track that, because that will also be in the high yield savings. I'm not going to cash stuff that. And OP and spending. So those other ones, I am going to start doing like sinking fund updates, because I like put them in my, I put them in like my budget line items, what I'm saving for, and then I track them on my end. But if I don't cash stuff them, obviously you don't see them. So I will start doing like updates of where my sinking funds are and how those are going. So I wanted to do this. This is kind of how my thought process has been going for the last few weeks as I learned of this change and thought to myself, oh gosh, what are we going to do with this? Is planning out what extra money is coming in, what areas I want to fund more, and what breakdowns of that would be reasonable to allow me to make progress on my debt and still be able to save for the things that we need, because everybody has different whatever ways of doing things, but I don't have much saved for larger things, and so I need to really be mindful of that so that it doesn't end up adding back to my HELOC. So you will be seeing these changes starting September 8th here, and so I'd love to know, how do you determine what goes on with your budget and what are your savings goals coming up? And again, we're not going into a new year or anything like that. I'm starting all of this kind of really towards the end of the year, but I want to see, this is a new change for me starting, the beginning of a school year, because then I'm getting all this money added to my checks. So this is a new change for me, and I would love to know going into, the last third of the year, end of quarter 3, what your savings goals look like at this point in time. So I'd love to hear about it down below. Please give this video a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Have a great day. Bye.